Hey gamers, Maniac here with another Lost Media, and keeping with the ongoing theme of the Avengers and Marvel in general, basically, this piece of Lost Media is going to have everything to do with actually the MCU, or at least a supposedly canonical portion of the MCU. There was a video that was done about, I don't know, a while ago from a virtual reality enthusiast channel that I've started watching, where he was decrying the loss of an Avengers virtual reality multiplayer title that originally was released on VR platforms, but because it was a free-to-play game, it became, or because it had free-to-play mechanics, as soon as the system's central server shut down due to the low player count, the game essentially became unplayable and it got delisted. I am not talking about Crystal Dynamics Marvel's Avengers game. They said that will continue on even after support for it ceases. And I'm not talking about the virtual reality game that was referred to in that particular video either, because they've already discussed it. There was a virtual reality game for home VR platforms. We will not be talking about either of those games because, yeah. There, however, is a different Avengers virtual reality game that was out for a blink and you'll miss it. And it was called Avengers Damage Control. Now, this particular VR game was not released for home virtual reality. In fact, at the time, home virtual reality had not taken off the way it has in the past year or so. And it didn't work with home virtual reality headsets. Obviously, a display is a display. But this game was actually developed by IBM X Labs, the same development studio that was responsible for the Star Wars VR games and stuff like that. Avengers Damage Control puts you into the shoes of not an Avenger, but a civilian that was given the opportunity to test Avengers hardware and software, basically super suits. It featured cameos from actors from the actual MCU, including, spoilers, the new Black Panther, Shuri, as the briefer. They actually got the actress that played Shuri to basically shoot some scenes basically to provide you a user briefing. And if they didn't in fact use actual actors from the MCU, including guys like Paul Rudd or women like Evangeline Lilly, the sound-alikes they got sounded pretty darn good, to be perfectly honest. It even sounded like they got the Benedict Cumberbatch who voices Stephen Strange to be in it as well. Essentially, the plot line of the movie is that you are touring and there's an attack on New York by a giant Ultron. And the Avengers, basically, you have to team up with the Avengers. You've been given a super suit of your design, either based upon Iron Man or based upon Black Panther designs, or both. It didn't matter. You and someone else. Basically, it was a two-player game, so you'd be paired up with another VR player. And so you would have to save New York from a gigantic Ultron alongside the rest of the Avengers. Far as I can tell, based upon the continuity, because of the events of the blip, the continuity kind of gets a little wonky because there are a lot of superheroes that appear in their either pre-Infinity War outfits, but they all know each other, and a lot of these superheroes didn't know each other before the events of Infinity War, but don't line up with the post-Endgame appearances either. Particularly the Hulk the Hulk in that series does not look or act like Professor Hulk. He looks like the Hulk, and we know that the Hulk was off-world during the events of the majority of Phase 3. So it's kind of wonky as to how canon it is based upon the appearance in the timeline. The game was developed by a studio called The Void, or was released by a studio called The Void. Now, what was The Void? The Void was a VR lounge experience facility. There are only a few of them all across the country. One was at the Freedom Tower in New York City, Manhattan. One at the Trade Center. One was in Disneyland, I believe in downtown Disney in Disneyland, Anaheim, California. And I honestly don't know where the other ones were. You had to literally go to one of those physical locations and pay a ticket to play. So there was no downloading the game. And the reason why you had to do that was because the Void had set up a space of objects and things like that in a virtual set that they had created. So even though you're in VR, very similar to my experience with games like Halo VR and Outpost Discovery, for example, even though you were in virtual reality, you were able to move. And they had put simple sets that you could actually interact with during the VR, and everything would basically tie in together. So you'd be seeing the virtual reality environment, but if you touched a chair or something or sat on a chair that was in front of you in the virtual reality space, you would actually be sitting in a real chair. It may not look exactly like it did in the VR space, or it might be a very simple design as opposed to the more elaborate design you'd be sitting in, but it would feel pretty much exactly what you'd expect. I think there are a couple of other virtual reality experiences that work very similar to that. The one I'm thinking of, I think there was like a Ghostbusters at Madame Tussauds VR game that might work similar to that, but don't quote me on that. I haven't seen any of this stuff. But it was more than just stand still, move around, circle around, move your controllers, that sort of thing. You would actually be interacting with stuff. Now, why is it, after I just gave this whole spiel basically about how it works, how it went, what the game's gameplay was, why is it considered lost media? The Void is gone. I believe there was some debate as to what happened to them. It could have been that the events of the pandemic may have forced basically facilities to shut down, everybody to quarantine, and the Void's operational costs, particularly for things like rent, required constant, ticketing, which was not possible during that time. And they had promissory notes, as far as I can tell, with certain with their developers that they would be paying back, which they were not able to do. As far as I can tell, because obviously they didn't have the funds that they needed to continue operations, that meant that spaces would start kicking them out. Like, I think that Disneyland, I think that Disney had a portion of it that they were expecting of money. They did not be able to meet that amount, and Disney pulled them from Disneyland. And I'm sure it was that story basically can be passed around to all the other spots. Although I think that even the World Trade Center event, the World Trade Center void space was only meant to be temporary, but because I remember it was literally up on their website for literally the blink of an eye. I know for a fact that there were showings at the Trade Center because there is one surviving video, which I will post a pinned comment below so that you can see it, of somebody actually doing the experience. Is the only, as far as I know, other than the trailers for the game, it is the only surviving footage of the experience at all, is that one particular video. And I gave heavy props to the person who made it. He got next to no views on it, but I gave heavy props to him for making it because, as far as I know, that's the only surviving footage of it other than the initial trailers and promotional material. So props there. What could happen about it? Well, as far as I know, like I said, IBM X Labs made it, or at least made the software portion of it. They've also developed other VR games that are currently available on other platforms. I mean, Tales from Galaxy's Edge was developed by them. Vader and the Vader episodes, the Vader VR episodes were developed by them, or was developed through them. That's all on. You can get that on pretty much Oculus Quest or PlayStation VR, and I think they're actually planning on releasing the new Tales from Galaxy's Edge on PlayStation 5 VR coming up as like a remaster or something. That's fine. That's great. Release Damage Control. I never get a chance to play that game. I really would like to. And as far as I know, the company that made it is now defunct. I'm assuming the rights to it probably have gone back to ILM, which is Disney, which also owns the Marvel stuff. So there's no concerns there about who owns it. We're pretty certain Disney and Marvel own it. And I mean, I would imagine probably the best place that they could probably stick it. I mean, if they can't reopen it, if they can't release it as like a home event, they could just simply just make it as part of like Disney World. If they ever wanted to open like a Wakanda themed area in Epcot's World Showcase, for example, they could have the damage control playable there. If they wanted to release, like, let's say, for example, just, I mean, Epcot would be a great place to put it, or Tomorrowland in the Magic Kingdom would be a great place to put it as like, hey, check out this VR experience or something like that. While you're waiting for your online orders to get made. That would be actually pretty fun. I mean, that would not be a bad idea, actually, at least as like a tech demo or as like a side event of some other attraction. But personally, I'd like to see it playable on the Quest. That would be, for me, the best way to play it at home. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Didn't mean to keep with the with all the Avengers theme stuff. Until next time, guys, my name is Maniac with GameAccess.net. Avengers Assemble. Take care. Over and out.